Okay. After I did the last one, I figure, okay, if you want to look at that as a baseline, but I want to make sure I try and keep a tighter focus on this, even though you realize how information wars are actually fought, particularly when if you know how to build a server, build a planetary motherboard, if you will, or the Trinity Hub server, which means there's information, visual, mathematical, geometrical information that's rated based on a galactic and a universal map. Okay, if you know how to reset yourself, which is to reset the codes, if you will, which is the keys, which is the encryption and the decryption keys. That's simple enough. Okay. I forgot something on my last video because I was so excited because of how this works, the precision actually in which it works, right? Because I didn't have to think about what I did. And if you understand what it means when I said to you in my previous video about I didn't have to think about what I said. I naturally did what I did. It just comes natural, which means that the natural spiritual flow of creation spheres, when you're experiencing being the one, the eternal spirit of fire, right? Then I naturally went down to that fabric store to wear something at school so I could wear my colors at school when I was in junior high school at Columbus, Tustin, junior high school in Tustin, California, back in the early 60s. I think it was around 63, something like that. I don't keep track of these dates anymore, particularly now because I've been memory dumping an enormous amount of goo, since I was a little kid, actually. But particularly when I got over here to the Big Iron after I set myself on fire in 2016, then I realized just huge memory dumps. Ridiculous amount of data, if you will, that represents fake timelines, phantom stuff, right? Because there's only one wave. It began with one wave. The one wave, right? The crystic spiral. So I go into the fabric store, right? And what you would have seen me wearing, because the image is still there, so I wish I could show you what I was wearing when I was 13, because you can see how this ties into gender splitting technology, if you will, and how colors are visualized mathematically and geometrically, what it actually means when the colors are being shown by the unit, the oversoul that is running the equipment to broadcast the message. That's what it is. It's a message. The colors are the codes. Okay, that's called a code transmission, which is a signet, signals intelligence, right? And so I wore a shirt that was short sleeve, right? Southern California weather, that had a background that was pink. And what do you think else was on that background? Dots, spheres. And what color do you think those spheres were? Emerald green. I was wearing emerald green spheres within a pink background. So the stem of a rose, the emerald color of a stem, like a stem cell, right? Go green or die, right? With a pink diamond rose, a crystic heart. That's right. When you see a pink rose in a garden, that's me. Okay. So you can do some research on pink rose, right? Sophia and the pink rose, right? Sisterhood of the Rose. And so those are known as ordinations, right? Which are initiations into learning ultimately wisdom. And the wisdom is called balance, so that you can always be with the one, right? So you're on fire forever to be with all the other creative artists and musicians and poets. And it's one of the reasons throughout my life, Mama knows my heart on how creative I love to be, because I write Mama poetry. Love poems. We live in love stories. So you can see how that was when I'm a kid, when I'm a lover boy and a lover girl joined as one, right? Because everything that you feel, I want to feel everything that you do, girl. Everything that you feel, how much fire you got, and then how much fire you got as a little boy. And I had a beautiful experience to be able to feel that when I was 6 years old with another girl. So it was just like, let's go together, let's go create a universe together, because I could experience and measure how much fire she had, right? So you want to be around a lot of fire. Yeah, right. Just like I'm looking at Kilauea, I saw the pictures this morning, and as that magma, living magma of a living spirit, yeah, I started crying because of the symbolic representation of what the visual is telling me, which means I'm experiencing the love in me that I'm experiencing through the visual, seeing the magma flow, right? And believe it or not, one of the things that came to me is I'm going to go jump into the Kilauea caldera. I know. That's what it began with, right? Liquid light. Okay. Liquid consciousness light. Crystal consciousness, crystal liquid consciousness, Cosmina. Right? And so I have fun with this. But what I was going to mention, I shared this with on Karen's Intel site about servers and information that we're experiencing through the code transfers, which are the frequency transfers, right? When pulling powerful current in from the echo worlds, right? And what I experience in me and what I've experienced in the last few days is like what I call when there is an enormous amount of fire, you're clearing out stuff that you don't want there, because if you have free will, truly free will, which is what true love is unconditional love, right? And so because of that, it means that when you think of information or codes, goo, that's running through a server, right, that is based on, if you will, the visual, mathematical, geographical user interface information that's coming through the server, right? You're experiencing guardian stuff, more of guardian consciousness level information versus their level of information, which is going in reverse mode, okay? Because it's a deadlight magnet based on deadlight information run by a QI AI, right? Which is the black hole, right? Which why we're here was to prevent the free fall, and thus reset, which is what I did in 2016 to light myself on fire, because as Dan Bowen correctly stated, it was all about securing the future. So in other words, it's not just the future of our children, it's the future of this template, which is the entire universal and galactic template. So then you can associate with the guardians of free will worlds, right? Interdimensional Free World Council, right? On behalf of the founder races and the Cosmina Council, the eternal ones. And so we know that because we experience the eternal spirit of fire, because we're lit on fire to love, because that is the hottest fire engine which we create, which means it's immediate manifestation. We're with the musicians, the first musician, always with the first musician. So let's go in with the flow. You go with the flow of the music. And why I've been listening recently to a lot of the language. You remember the language. I never forgot the language. Right? The original language. The original language of the founder races, the root races. Because it's what it feels like when you feel the music, the language of music. You never forgot the language of the music, which means you never forgot wisdom. You never forgot the original spiritual teachers, the first creators, the first eternal sun from which it all began. And that is the simplicity of it and the beauty of it, to experience how simple it actually is. And that's why even when I was a child growing up, it's so simple that I didn't Uh, it's like basic logic when you understand really, when you're experiencing basic logic yourself, base platforms, base language, base programming language. When you have the entire electromagnetic radiation waveform harmonic spectrum available to you because you are what that is. Your energy is represented by what that is, which is your consciousness in the pre-phase state with an oversoul, all right, as a polarity integrator, is to get rid of anything that doesn't represent what love is because that's what the law is. So you have a one connection. So you're with the highest one, which is eternal love, which is why it's the law, because it's basic logic. Log scales, which are scalar waves of consciousness delivery. So we're delivering the waves, the plasma waves, through the grid, anchored to the magnetosphere and the echo worlds. So what happens is that as the morphogenetic field structure's clearing out the resistance, so you have something that's in resistant mode to experience what we are. That's why it goes on the attack when it's phone with me. When I communicate what it begins to experience, it doesn't want to experience that. And you see why that is. So it's in resistant mode against that. So it counters that because it wants to experience what? The lower waves. Low power versus high power. Low power versus high power. So you can imagine what it would be like in the biosphere when the cross, right, the vertical and the horizontal in this planet was experiencing eternal love right now. In other words, every unit of consciousness in the entire planet, at every dimension and every density level, is experiencing the one. That's a lot of energy. So now you get into the voltage regulator side of things, the thermostat side of things. How many units that we have here that are running software that could not handle that? That's a measurement that is incremental, and why it's being done the way it's being done, and the measurement of the way that it's being done, because we can experience it here when I'm in one of these, which is why, as I mentioned in the past, I was experiencing the clearing because I was running so hot in my spine, right? When was this, Mom? A year ago, roughly about a year ago, when I was in Southern Oregon, right on the border there between the Klamath River in Northern California and the Rogue River, if you will, in Southern Oregon. And I began experiencing that pulse wave, right? An enormous amount of voltage. So that is an EMP weapon, okay? If you will, because that's a lot of hot voltage being run through there, right? So you see why that is. So you know that during the last dance, knowing the one you're with, I knew that I had to be certain places, even though I punched my ticket, right? And knew that I had completed the work that I did, but I'm always on the job because you're serving the one, which means you're always in the accelerated mode of gifting electrons, okay, at the highest rate of speed, because if you can detect the loss of one electron in somebody else, remember we're back to the hypersensitive detector, then I'm experiencing it me when you're plugged into a motherboard. So then it becomes a measure of resistance. How much resistance is experienced here, which is the miasma body, the planetary miasma body, or if you will, the universal and galactic miasma body. So you can sort of measure and see in terms of metrics between memory wipes and experiencing something new, or if you will, reprogramming, re-edits, but they can't change the Cosmina records, the Christic records. So when you have access to the Christic records, okay, then you know what's going on because you're being informed by what's going on through the one, which is the FFI field, which is the highest level of creative intelligence. So when you have a one connection as a polarity integrator, as a guardian, you're getting the information that you need in order to be a guardian. Right? Particularly at this level of creation, when you're processing what you become aware of, not only why you're here, but what it is that you need to do in order to prevent a complete free fall. Right? So you understand why this real estate is so important when it's perceived and known through the galactic history of how many gazillions of years this goes back to experience what we're experiencing now and why we're all here. Why the guardians are here in force. Right? Notice how I put the emphasis on that. Force. The EFFI force field, right? So you know that if you have a primal instinct within you to experience what love is, it goes on forever, gifting electrons, because the worlds we live in are born out of that energy, which is the first musician. Then you realize how creative you are, how you love poetry, how you love stories. Then it's basic logic that the grand creator loves other creators that are different. And the difference in that is the torque speed difference between an inverter and a torque converter. Because the energy that we use to be different is what love is, that's on fire to create. So we create different things, but the energy that we use is the same that other co-creators create because they're experiencing the one, which is what love is that goes on forever. So the music that we're tuned into together as creative artists and musicians is in harmony, which means we're in harmony with each other, with our oversoul consciousness in which we're playing music together. As artists, musicians, poets, storytellers. Wow, what do you want to experience? So you see that, and this is why when I was a child, I ran right to Mama. Because it's so beautiful. But the beautiful and the colors and the waves and the form in which that energy naturally flows in oversoul arcane consciousness is so beautiful to experience because we're experiencing the essence. The essence of a spirit, which is the nature of the spirit, which is the nature and the form and the flow in which the celestial mechanics are naturally in harmony and balance with the rhythm of the wave, the spirit in the radio wave, right? So what I shared with Karen this morning is much in the way that I use Irina Goaya as an example when she said, brother, you're carrying the codes. That means she has the capacity with the map or the template that she's running with her soul consciousness to translate the proper codes and the frequencies. Otherwise, she wouldn't have responded in the way in which she did. So this means that she has been able to successfully rebuild herself in a way in which she's able with her radio body to translate those frequencies that's held by somebody who represents Emerald. Right? And that becomes a measurement of success that we're all doing here, which is clearing the server so the rotation, the actual speed and rotation of the Merkabas are now spinning at a higher rate of speed, which means the servers are now what? Processing, okay, what we're experiencing, and I can feel within me that the server is now running faster. That means that the morphogenetic field structure of what people are becoming aware of, which means they're learning by experiencing what they're learning, which is what they're being informed of, what they're learning through the server. So the server is running at a higher rate of speed because the amount of energy that is vertical and horizontal is now moving at a higher rate of speed, which is why we experience the spike in the Schumann. That's called Gaia, Sophia, ascending, which is the rebirth of goddess energy. And if you look at the stuff that was put up by Lisa Renee, the Ascension Glossary and Energetic Synthesis, you can see a lot of the history of what is known by virtue of why we're here, that information is made available, right? So then you could say, well, how come there's so many other folks that are communicating on the internet and YouTube that aren't sharing that information, right? And in many ways, it's like, well, it's not my will to impose my will on somebody else, what they choose to do with their energy to experience. They want to spend all their day and night, watching and experiencing this or whatever it is that they do, because the universe of creation is intelligent enough to know what it does with its energy in order to experience what love is. It goes on forever, gifting electrons to create the worlds that are born out of that love, which is what we are and which is being done. Because we're experiencing it as we're co-creating it together as musicians. Right? And so that's basic logic, which is a log scale, a scalar wave. A scalar wave of consciousness, creation, energy spheres. So when all the spheres are in balance, we're experiencing the balance in our central nervous system, right? Yeah. So I knew as a child, right, they're going after the central nervous system so that we're experiencing fear, anxiety, stress. So all you have to do is enumerate all of the things that we become aware of that cause us to have a stress reaction as a result of what we're held captive to. So we're held captive to something that is dying, okay? Which is a black hole state of consciousness because it can never catch up to zero. So that's how when I was a child, I'm not supposed to lose any energy, right? As a result of the energy it is experiencing itself feeding on me. So I realized I'm not supposed to lose energy, or if you will, I'm not supposed to lose what I'm aware of that I'm giving energy to, which means that's one thing less that was there, that's no longer there, that I was once giving love to, that is gone. Okay? So you can see how the torque scale measurement works between one and the other, between what is getting removed, or if you will, is losing light versus gaining light, and how the actual spin rotation and speed of the Merkaba, okay, is experienced that way between one and the other. One is losing energy and needing energy from us, and we are gaining an energy going in the other direction because we're running at a higher rate of curve speed. Curve speed as in learning speed. To be aware of what's going on in order to protect what it is we are, which is what love is, which is our shield. That's why the first thing I did at 4 years of age when I had this up and running as fast as I possibly could at age 4. And that's when I realized, and firewall. Because you're in an energy war, which is a war between, if you will, lines of communication. Right? And how that works on a motherboard between a resistor and a capacitor. Our capacity to experience more light, which is living light, which is real light, which is what love is, that we're booming out as healers in order to maintain the balance in the poles as a polarity integrator. Those are critical jobs for all of us that are here or have been doing that. Right? I mean, we averted some nasty, I call them booby traps, which are consciousness traps. Right? To hold consciousness captive to what it is rather than what we are, which isn't. So that's a manner of knowing the difference between mirrors or magnets, a dead magnet and a living magnet. Because there is a definite torque speed difference between the two, particularly when it comes to learning. That's why that's like learning in reverse and then learning at the highest rate of speed going forward. So now when you begin to see the difference between one spiral, the minus 13 Metatronic, right, and who we are as a polarity integrator is 0, which is pre-phase, now we're in the matter. Oh, and now I'm experiencing the hologram, right? And back to balance, or the spheres all balanced, which is, for me, the equal distribution of electrons running at the highest rate of speed, so we're all experiencing what love is in a state of balance, the balance of the spheres, which is the law of least effort to experience being love, because there is no resistance, which is loss of energy. And it works the same way that water flows through a fire hose in what they call friction loss, right? The resistance. And how you can see how that works between larger and larger volumes, they're at lower pressure. Right? Most of those wildland firefighters will tell you, because I experienced it, the smaller the hose, the higher the pressure you got to have it at in order to deliver water, but you're not getting as much. The larger the hose, the more water that's flowing through there, the volume, right, is getting more water with less energy required. So if you want to think of that as a gated Y, when your arms are up in a state of love and joy, right? Go take a look at a gated Y on a fire truck and ask them, what does a gated Y do? Well, we plug 1.5 inches in on the inside, right? And then you get 2 coming out the other side. So I get 2 lines of equal value from 1 line of value. So that's 1, 2, 3. That's right. That's exactly right. 2 and 1 equals 3. 1 and 3. And that's the relationship between fire and ice. The extremes, right? The hottest fire and the coldest ice. The electromagnetic spectrum. To maintain the atmospherics. Running calm waters. No turbulences, no broken arrows on the gyrodome. Perfect balance. As consciousness, soul arcing consciousness is in perfect balance with its gyroscope. The neuroscope. Scoping, scanning the terrain, measuring the terrain on the loss and gain. Right? And maintaining the balance by having a permanent pole connection as a monopole to make sure that we're maintaining the balance and our ability to have enough energy to do it. So that means that you have to be able to pull and hold the energy structure so that you're not losing more and more energy. No, I got to keep it up and keep it up. So this becomes a torque speed differential between losing energy and gaining energy and making sure that we don't fall all the way down. No. Yeah. So the servers, okay, are running at a higher rate of speed, which means people are waking up at a higher rate of speed, which means we're experiencing more light and less resistance. That's why it's counterattacking, right? Just like go look at any war map, any ping pong game, right? Because that's what it is. Competition is a war game. Want to play another game? Remember that in the movie, War Game? You want to play another game? No, we don't play no head games. No. Take the headset off. That's what I did in 2016 when I lit myself on fire. I took the headset off and said, I'm plugging the jack. That's the same thing as unplugging the jack in the back of an AV stereo receiver and transmitter. We're done. That was exactly my words. I said, we're done with them. We were successful. It's a done deal. That's why I give thanks every single day to all of you that are here on behalf of the one, the law of one, the law of spheres, the law of balance, the law of least effort to experience being loved by us. Thank you all for being here.